much is being talked about in terms of business and entrepreneurship. But with the fresh dispensation, we are hearing about stuff that will enable the that will sustain business environment in Enugu State. And so, Tony, I need you to describe the current business atmosphere in Enugu.
Well, the business atmosphere in Enugu is not encouraging at all. We all know from historical times. Historically, Enugu always was referred to as a civil service, educational state, and so we didn't have a lot of businesses here historically. Well, but because of the lack of employment, a lot of businesses, businesses began to grow in Enugu. Businesses, started opening up in Enugu. But the situation is bleak, and the reason the situation is bleak is because of the GNI, the gross national income. It's not just an Enugu thing, it's a Nigerian thing, right? The gross national income in Nigeria is very, very low. What that simply means is that the people who spending, as opposed to grow businesses, do not have the spending capacity anymore, and businesses are suffering, And so with the high rate of inflation today at 24.1%, things are very expensive. Our minimum wage is still at about 30,000 naira. What that means is that families do not earn enough, and so they're quickly drawing their scale of preference, what we call in economics a scale of preference. That means the most important needs of the family are put at the top of the list, and the less important things are put at the bottom of the list. And what that is doing to some commodities, that a lot of these commodities are quickly moving into what I call the luxury list. And because of that, businesses are dying, people are losing their jobs, government is losing GNI, government is losing IGR, And so it's a cycle, a chain of events, that have been set up, because of the bad economy.
Okay, your point is that the bad business environment is not an Enugu thing, solely
No,
an Enugu thing.
it's not solely an Enugu thing. It's tied to the national GDP, which is the gross national income, right? Our GDP is reduced because for so many years Nigeria depended solely on crude oil and crude products, right? And so, but from 2007, after the last credit crunch, we lost a lot of our customers, a lot of our buyers stopped coming to buy from Nigeria. So that started affecting our gross national income. And so because of that, government decided to invest heavily in agriculture so as to diversify the economy. It's working, but it's slow. And so what that simply means is that there is a lack of liquidity. There is insufficient flow of liquidity into the economy. All the forex that we used to get from sale of crude oil, we're not getting anymore. And so it means we don't have enough money to run our budget anymore. And so it's affecting employment, it's affecting the business sector, it's affecting salaries. But most importantly, the GNI is important, because if you pay workers well, workers spend money. And when workers spend money, businesses grow. So right now, workers are not earning enough. And because they're not earning enough, they are tightening their family spending. And that family spending that is tightening up is affecting the growth of businesses. And if businesses are not growing and making enough income, what is going to happen? They're going to lay off staff. So if they lay off staff, government, both local and state governments, won't make IGR.
But then apart from the civil service now, the workforce and their salaries and emoluments, and the contributions it make towards their economic development. But why are we not looking at the role the MSMEs play now, the medium and small scale businesses? We know that most economies thrive in a robust...
All economies.
SMEs.
MSMEs move economies.
What do you think about that one, especially in our environment in Enugu?
It's back to the same thing I'm talking about, right? If government is not funding, MSMEs need funding. And for them to get funding, it has to be captured in the budget, right? Now, it's not about what you capture, it's about what you're able to fulfill. So at the beginning of the year, the federal government announces the budget for the year. It doesn't mean federal government has that money. They have to find that money to fulfill the budget, right? And so if our GDP is affected, we're not able to place money where we need it. Do you understand? So MSMEs definitely need funding, but the problem is that because of the slow economy, because of the dwindling GDP, government is not really able to give these businesses the funds they need to grow their businesses. So I do understand that the MSMEs grow economies. They're the highest employers of labor anywhere in the world, so they move any economy forward, right? And so the MSME has to be a robust sector. And to make it robust, there has to be funding. And we've always said, those of us in the business sector have always said that the lack of funding for the MSMEs is affecting everything. It's affecting the investor, it's affecting the workers that work for these MSMEs, right? It's affecting the state and the local governments as well.
Are you particularly comfortable with the level of MSMEs we have in Enugu at the moment?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We had a meeting recently with the Deputy High Commission. You know, he was in Enugu a few weeks ago.
Deputy who?
British Deputy High Commission.
Okay.
And so one of the things I said to him is that we need to collaborate with the UK government, right? But he also needs to advise the state government to find a creative way to attract foreign direct investment, right? Because if we can't do it based on the national GDP, what we need to do is open up certain sectors to attract foreign direct investment, right? For example, agriculture has to be opened up.
Okay.
Right, agriculture needs a lot of investment because agriculture is the bedrock of any economy. Again, agriculture is the most employer of labor, you know, in Nigeria and in most other economies. So what you simply need to do is open up the sector, livestock, crop production, and of course export.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, with what you know about Enugu business environment, what kind of businesses do you think will actually thrive here?
Yeah, in Enugu.
First of all, food is big business. But we're just not taking it seriously. Agriculture is big business. Anywhere in the world, I would say agriculture is the most employer of labor, right? But the problem is that the basic Nigerian still sees agriculture as a dirty man's job, right? There are generations of farmers in America that are billionaire families, and they've transferred the skills and this money-earning, machines down generations, And if you look at Nigeria, some of our biggest past military generals are farmers. Obasanjo was one of them. Is still one of them.
But that's on the upscale.
Hold on. Buhari is one of them. The point I'm trying to establish is that agriculture is big business. So we must invest in agriculture. Why it is important to invest in agriculture is that we need to produce enough livestock, produce enough food, so that we can create a robust middle ground. In agriculture, you have three sectors. You have production, you have processing, and then you have the business part of it, which involves distribution and export, right? Now, if you don't invest in farmers, they won't produce enough, whether livestock or crops. That the middle sector, which is going to employ a lot of labor, needs to produce what we call processed goods, right? Cassava goes into gari, goes into starch, goes into a whole lot of other stuff when processed. So you need to fund the cassava farmer to produce enough so that we can have a robust middle ground and then serve the local economy and export the excesses, right? Corn, just name it. Livestock, corned beef. Why should we import corned beef from Brazil? What I want you to understand is that everything you consume that we buy from overseas is depleting our opportunity to create jobs in our community. So what we need to stop doing is importing all of these things that we do, because when you import, you gather all the units of our money and you send it to the white man and you give them capacity to grow their industries, employ more labor. What we simply need to do is start giving our people know-how to produce these things locally so that we can keep our money within the economy. When you do that, you create enough jobs, you drive away crime, and you build an economy that is really, really strong.
All right, so now is it a cheering to look at what the current government in Enugu State is doing with the agriculture sector? Yeah. Now, before now, we used to have Ministry of Agriculture, but now the current administration has said it is now going to be Ministry of Agriculture and Agro-Industrialization. How do you see that aspect of the ministry?
I don't care what you call it, right? Agriculture is agriculture. And in agriculture, you have production, you have processing, and then you have the business part of it. We need to see these three sectors in agriculture working, right? So no matter what you call it, invest in production. And I said production of livestock and crops. When you do that, we have more people going into farming. That means what happens is that right now farmers are struggling to sell. I was doing a radio program one time and a young man called from Benue State, almost crying. And he said that he's a tomato farmer, right? And during tomato farming season, they work so hard. But during the harvest season, many farmers, harvest tomatoes. And the prices of tomatoes crash, right? Because the supply now outweighs the demand. And so it crashes. And a lot of times they take these tomatoes to the market and nobody to buy. They leave them there and walk home. And so all the work through the year is wasted. And I said to him, I am sorry for you, but what you need to do is gather a group of people, like a cooperative or something, and set up a cottage processing industry, where what you would do is, during the harvest season, tomato is cheap, come together, buy up all the things from your neighbors, right? And process them into finished products.
To paste.
That paste or powder or whatever it is, process it. When you do that, you increase the shelf life. That means that tomato that would have, spoiled in 5 days can now last for 3 years. And there's no way you can sell them within 1 year. And so you've increased your profitability, you've increased your productivity, and you've increased your capital that you're going to invest the next year. So that's the simple solution. So what we need in agriculture is invest in production so farmers will have enough to produce, whether livestock or crop. Then invest in the most important sector.
You're actually taking us to the end of this discussion, but there's some point we need to talk about, since we are talking about Enugu State.
Yes.
Enugu State government is heavy, we're hearing, on boosting commerce. What with the investment roundtable that is trying to open up investment opportunities in Enugu. Now we are talking away from agriculture and all to talk about other aspects of the economy. We also know about the plan for e-commerce and the e-whatever, every other thing, to ensure that we go electronically. And we are also talking about the investment sector this week. Sorry, the transportation sector. This week there was a summit, or not a summit now, a press conference where the Commissioner for Transportation was addressing the press on the need to grow the state economy by 26 billion naira from that sector. So I need you to critique some of the plans and the policies of the state government in terms of entrepreneurship.
Well, instead of criticize the government, what I can do is give recommendations.
Okay.
And that's what I started to do already. You invest in production, whether livestock or crop, but then there's a middle ground that is absolutely very important for you to create jobs, and that is processing, right? Look at all the teas that you drink, all the beverages and all of that. They are either coming from Western Nigeria or Northern Nigeria or from overseas. What we need to do as a state is set up industries to begin to supply these things that our people consume daily, be it beverages, be it tea, be it snacks, we don't need to send that money out. So if this government were wise, what this government will do is invite investors, and the government itself should invest in processing, right? Set up industries that will produce everything that we consume on a daily basis. That's the only way for the state to become a model in Nigeria and actually create jobs. Everything we consume, make sure there's an industry here that is producing noodles, that is producing spaghettis, that is producing beverages, that's producing everything. Enugu is how many million people?
About 5 million.
So set up industries to serve the people, and this city will become one of the most prosperous states in Nigeria, right? And when you do that and ensure that there is 24-hour power, I've said it a million times, if you will, as a state, make sure that you have 24-hour power, what you're going to attract is foreign direct investment from the rest of Nigeria, from overseas. And then there's going to be enough jobs here. What you're going to find is an attraction of people from all over the world to start coming to Enugu. It's that simple.
Now when she said critiquing
Yes.
what the government is doing at the moment,
Yes.
we need to understand where she's coming from. Now you're talking about steady source of power.
Yes.
Recently we know that the state government has actually passed
an
into
electricity
law
bill.
Okay.
electricity bill, which is now a law in Enugu State, for the state government to now begin to generate and distribute its own power to the residents in Enugu. Isn't that a welcome
No,
development?
it is. I mean, I've been in the media space for a very long time, and this has been my recommendations for years. Until you create an opportunity for a state or a country to have 24-hour power, you can't really drive away poverty. Igbo people are very creative people, right? So if you give 24-hour power, the carpenter on the street, if you care, ask him to pay 50,000 a month. He will pay 50,000 a month, but give him 24-hour power. Right? Now, people don't know about exports. You talk about service export and all of that. You can live in Nigeria and work for companies overseas, just sitting on your computer. But you can't do that. There are jobs I have on my table that I'm supposed to have done the last 2 weeks, but you don't have power, right? It affects your productivity. So if you create power, people are able to employ themselves, exporting their services through the service export industry, right? There are websites that you can go to and sell your skills, and people globally will pay you in dollars, right? So we need to give the creative young people of Enugu and the Southeast ability to do this, and giving them power does that for them. Now, the industries we have, the welders we have, the carpenters, the people who are in the food, small food processing industries we have in Enugu, give them power. They will become more productive. And the more productive they are, the more taxes they pay. And IGR grows.
So the current step by the Enugu state government towards that
it is a welcome.
Is a laudable.
It is a welcome and laudable development. But the question is, it's a new government. Are they going to do it? What are they going to do differently? We've seen different governments come and promise many things, and we didn't see these things eventually. One just ended 8 years ago, and for me, it was the most terrible 8 years, of this state. I'm sorry, I'm not a political person.
No, it's your opinion.
I'll say how it is. So this is a government that's just about 4 months. So we don't know what they're going to do.
But then a step has been taken.
If they do it, then it will change. It will be a game changer for Enugu State.
And then again, Ngozika made reference to the investment roundtable that just held in the summit.
The one of 3 weeks ago?
Yes. The one of 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, where the Deputy Commissioner attended?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, this is the first time in Enugu State we're beginning to see things of this nature happen.
Beautiful.
I'm just looking at it from the angle that the current government is trying to open up Enugu State to
But that's the only way.
Because government, as we know, may not have all the money to come create industries.
But you don't need to have all the money. I've said it a million times.
So what do they need to do?
Open up the stage for foreign direct investment.
Which is what the government is doing.
Now, there are development, I have said this again a million times, that there are developmental funds that are waiting to be taken. The state government doesn't need to spend its own money to create jobs. You just need to know how to attract these developmental funds. Globally, these funds are available, right? I tell you a story. I returned to this country a few years back, and I was to bring a company from Germany to come and do a waste-to-energy project here in Nigeria. Nothing was going to come from financially was going to come from the state government. Now, after searching for the Commissioner for Environment for so long, eventually I found him, and I told him, I've been looking for you to tell you that I have this company who wants to come and make the waste in Enugu disappear. And not only disappear, but make money out of that waste. All you need to do is give us a right hand of fellowship. Give us a place we're going to come and set up a factory. We'll make it disappear. Eswama won't have to struggle to collect waste because there is an EU fund available for that project. This man said to me, I'm sorry, we already have 2 companies who wants to do that. This was 2015. This is how many years later? Where is that project?
And we are still with that. Okay, Tony, we are beginning to come to the end of this segment, but I'd like you to, in 1 minute, tell us how we can enable a viable business environment in Enugu.
One, give the citizens know-how. Set up small courses. In Nigeria, we have said that people who don't have university degrees are useless, and we've condemned them to poverty. Now, set up training programs, for 3 months, 6 months programs where you can give people skills, right? That will set them up for life. Now, when you give them these skills, set up a bank or an institution that will provide funding for people who have been trained and other people who may not have been trained but have skills that are financially viable. Now, give them funding, but make sure that there's a robust oversight function that oversees what they do. Guide them through a mentorship program. See them to success. When they succeed, they pay back the funds given to them, then you can fund more people. That's one of the ways you can actually get the ball rolling and make sure that Enugu State